Hi everyone, and happy new month to you, and I guess happy new year as well, because this is the very first vlog of the year and it's great to be back, and I'm back for real this time around. And if you've not read my book, The Colorful Path Towards Lasting Relationship and Love, you need to grab a copy of this book on Amazon. You can get the Kindle version or you can get the hard copy. I think it's a must read for everyone, regardless of your status, whether you're single or married or divorced or thinking about it, whichever one it is. I think this book is packed with so much wisdom. Like, I'm actually surprised I wrote this book. When I go back to read this book, I always say this, I'm actually quite impressed. And I would not even take credit for it. I think God just decided to bless me with so much wisdom that are all written in this book. And some of the stuff I'll be discussing today, especially as it relates to marriage, is already discussed extensively in this book. I can only cover so much in a short vlog, so that's one of the reasons why I think you should read the book. So today I'll be talking about marriage, getting married early versus getting married later in life. And I think age is a determining factor for a lot of people. They just feel like, okay, I'm old enough, so I should get married. So I'll be looking at the pros and the cons of getting married early versus getting married later in life. And by early, I mean, I'm not talking about early like children getting married or something like that. That's disgusting. I'm talking about like maybe late teens, fresh out of college or fresh out of high school, 18, and then early 20s. I mean, my mid-20s, I'm almost 26, so I don't think I'm considered early at this age. I think, yeah, your girl is getting old. Yeah, I really get, I'm getting old. So at this stage in my life, I don't think I'm considered early, but early is still like very early 20s and late teens. Getting married early versus getting married when you're getting to your mid-20s, late 20s, and 30s, and so on. So what are the advantages and what are the disadvantages of doing that? And this is research based, so most of everything I'll be discussing today is based on what other people have gathered. And I'll be starting with the disadvantages of getting married early. And one of the stated disadvantages is lack of parenting skills and being overwhelmed with the responsibility. And that is very understandable because, hey, you're two young people and you're just starting out, and taking care of a family can really be a lot of pressure on you. So I understand that, like, lack of parenting skills, it can be a major like setback for young couples just starting out their life. Another thing is being deprived of one's youth. Now, I think this one is a very, very like, it's a significant disadvantage because you don't really get to experiment with life. You don't really get to do some things that your mates might get to do. You're forced to be responsible at a very young age, start taking care of a family, start taking care of a home, start paying bills. So that could really be a challenge for young people that are starting out in marriage. Another one is you don't take time to develop yourself and an understanding of each other, which comes with maturity. And I think this one is based on the assumption that maturity comes with age. It is not really necessarily true, but generally it does come with age. Like, the older you are, the more mature you're expected to be. And really getting to understand yourself as a person and getting to understand even the other person does come with a little bit of experience. It does come with a little bit of maturity. So that could be a setback for young people getting married. And another one is financial difficulty. And I think, of course, this is significant because you're two young people, you're not really making as much as, because really your earning potential increases with more experience, with more education. So if you're just young and you're just starting out, that's really could put you in a disadvantage. But that is not necessarily so, because some young people are making money, y'all. So I think for every one of these things, it's a bit of a generalization. It doesn't really apply to every situation across the board. And the last one that I wrote down is lack of compatibility. I think this one is very significant. And if you read the colorful part, I really discussed compatibility extensively, because I really think compatibility is a huge deal. I think compatibility is very, very important in marriage. So you can read more about that in the colorful path. And the advantages that are stated is less baggage in life. And I think this one is so vital. Oh my gosh. Marrying young, you don't have as much baggage because you've not even, like, I don't think you've dated as much and you've had as much serious relationships whereby people are breaking your heart, and you have like all of this walls and baggages and concepts and ideas. So I think it just frees you from all of that stuff, because the older you get, like the more baggage you get, especially from past relationships, and those things can affect your present relationship. But if you're a young person, most likely that is your first boyfriend or your second boyfriend or your first girlfriend or your first kiss. So the baggage is less, at least expected to be less. So I think that's the beauty of getting married early. And another one is it's easier to have children, and fertility is of course a big deal whenever marriage is being discussed, especially for women, because the older you are, the biological clock is real, of course. So the older you get, the more difficult it becomes. So it is better to just do it early. And I guess for men too, I'm sure there has to be a stage that you get to that you can't perform as well. So it is better to do it early if you're thinking about that, if you're thinking about children and fertility and everything like that, and you get less complication. And your innocence is preserved. And this one, I actually wrote it down because I feel like you haven't had that much experience. And it really ties back to what I said earlier. You haven't had that much experience. That may just be like, if you get married early, I think it is expected that they're still virgins at least. Well, young people of nowadays, you can't really tell, but generally speaking, for the most part, I think that's probably like the first person you've ever dated, or the second person. There is that innocence is still there, and it just gets to be you and your partner. So I think there's a beauty in that. And moving on to getting married later in life. So those are the advantages and the disadvantages of getting married early. Now let's talk about getting married later in life. I think we live in such a very interesting time and space right now, the way the world is. I think people are getting married generally later in life than it was before in previous generation, and that is understandable. And sometimes it's not even really by choice. It is what it is. It is what it is, because sometimes life just happens, and some people do want to get married early, but they just didn't get the opportunity, or they didn't meet the right person. And the older you grow, the more pickier you become, or the more difficult it becomes for you to find the right person, because now you already have so much more wisdom, you have so much more understanding, and then your chances of taking risks, of just jumping in with anybody, it kind of reduces, because you want to make sure you're making the right decision. And this is for people that are not like desperate, and marriage is not a do or die affair. If you don't consider marriage like a do or die affair, and you're not really desperate for marriage, then you really want to take time and be cautious about your decision. It's different when you're younger, because when you're younger, you're more prone to risks. You're not really thinking about some things. You're not really thinking about compatibility. You're not really thinking that much more long term as an older person. And I'm speaking from personal experience, because the older I grow, the more I realize my concept is changing about marriage, and even my ideas about the kind of people or the kind of person rather that I think would fit me. Even as early as last year, I dated some people that, looking back now, I'm like, what were you thinking? So I have even grown that much more to the points that I feel like, okay, this is who I think I'm going to be compatible with, and these are the kind of qualities I'm looking for to make this thing work long term. Because hey, marriage is no joke. Marriage is a serious business, and especially in this generation with the rate at which marriage is failing, you really have to be careful. So that is something to consider. But here are some of the pros and cons of doing it later in life. And I'm going to discuss the cons first. The societal pressure and the stigma, especially for women. The societal pressure is real. The stigma is definitely real. The older you grow, like all of this, like she's becoming an old maid, 30 is the expiring date and things like that. So the pressure is certainly there to get married. And another one is, the older you get, the more difficult it becomes to find a partner. And I mentioned this a little bit earlier. The fact is that the pool becomes smaller because now you have all of these younger people you're competing with for the same man or the same woman. It goes both ways. So the older you get, the more difficult it becomes, and the more pickier you even become as a person, because now you have like all of this knowledge, you have all of this understanding, you've seen from looking at other people like what their marriage is like, and you have your ideas are more advanced about what it is that you really want in marriage and what it is that you really want in life. And the other one is complications in conception, which I really mentioned when I was talking about getting married early. The fact that it can get complicated, especially for women, the older you get. But thanks to science, people are finding ways around it. There is in vitro fertilization, there is surrogacy, and there are different things people are doing, maybe freezing your eggs. So it may not really be a priority as much for people these days because there are just ways around these things. But those are some of the disadvantages of getting married later in life. And there are the advantages. You already have your career going and you have your money, and this is the big deal because money is important. Let's not kid ourselves. Money matters. Money is a huge deal when it comes to marriage, because divorce happens a lot because of finances. So having money, it is crucial. So the fact that you have already built your career up to a certain extent, you have your money, it is easier just going into marriage because then you can pay your bills easily and take on the added responsibilities easily. And another factor is that you have had time to discover yourself. So you have already gotten started on your journey of self-discovery and you have grown a little bit into who you are. And I think this is vital. I actually discussed this in the colorful part as well. The fact that you have really spent much more time getting to know you, getting to discover you. Now you know what your ideas are about your personal preferences, what your concept of happiness is, and what your goals are, and even up to an extent, the pursuit of your purpose is already like in place. You're ready towards that journey. So you're more firm in your identity. It is much more better getting married that way. So you actually know, like, this is the kind of person that I want to spend the rest of my life with. This is the kind of person that I think fits me. This is the kind of person that I think our vision align, that we can work together to make this thing work, to make this marriage work, to make this home work. So I think it is very, very important to really discover yourself. And it's a continuous journey. It's a continuous process. This idea of self-discovery, it's a continuous process. But if you do it later in life, as in marriage later in life, you have already grown a little bit more into who you are as a person. And I think that's one advantage of waiting to get married. And another one is wisdom and maturity. And as I said earlier, it's not necessarily a age factor, but generally speaking, it is expected that you're wiser and you're more mature the older you are, because it does come with experience as well, and you can handle life issues better. And marriage can be really stressful, but if you're older, you're expected to have more capacity to handle pressure, to handle difficult situations. So that is an advantage in that sense. And of course, you will appreciate your marriage more. You will appreciate the person more. You won't take them for granted as much because you've just had all of these experiences, and you know it is not easy to land a good man, and you know it is not easy to land a good woman. So you will appreciate more the person you end up getting married to at the end of the day, because hey, it's not easy. It really is not. So I think that sense of appreciation is going to be there, and you won't take the person for granted as much. And lastly, lasting happiness. And this one is naturally not my idea. I got this from a psychological article, which I think is interesting. A psychologist wrote this. So it says, although those who marry are generally happier than those who don't. That's interesting. I didn't know that. So that's one of the reasons why you should get married again. You are generally happier than those that don't get married. That's an interesting fact. Happiness. We're all in pursuit of happiness. So those who get married are generally happier than those who don't. And so it says, although those who marry are generally happier than those who don't, tying the knot prematurely can complicate life later on because it either accelerates or prevents other life transitions from occurring. And I think it just ties back into everything I've mentioned, the fact that you don't get to explore life as much, you don't get to discover yourself as much, and you are tied down with responsibility at a very young stage in your life. So that could really affect your level of happiness. You don't get to build your career as much, you don't get to have as much money. Although people are doing it, young people are getting married and they're going back to school, and even older people are doing it, but it is hard, it is difficult. So it is better to have a balance to everything. By the end of the day, I think it's not a matter of, is it better to get married early? Is it better to get married late? I think everybody has to make that choice individually. It's not worth it at the end of the day if you're forced to get married and then you're miserable, because your happiness is very important. So thank you for watching, and I will see you again next week. Bye-bye.